Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. We're doing as we did yesterday. Still enjoying the holiday, but providing content. So away we go. This recorded, and it's good. It's a good day to start because we get right off the bat some good news since we last talked, Tom. Yesterday was a thorough vetting of who's gone and who's coming in and what we like, what we don't like, and what we're excited about and hopeful for, and all the things in between. And then we got a center. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. We were waiting on one, and I think you could extrapolate that out and say we've been waiting on one for, at least one in the making for 3 years, 4 years, something along those lines.
No, for real. Since about the time Willie was let go, we've been waiting on a brand new center, and now Florida State has it. And it's somebody who is quite adept, specifically in the pass blocking game, in Luke Pettibon from Wake Forest, 6'2", 295. But we could get into those particulars if you like, but people want to know what PFF has to say just to give a ballpark. It's never an exact thing, but the ballpark is a professional ballpark. It is not a ragtag single-A ballpark that is dilapidated. This is good stuff.
It's really good. Look, he's played in 38 college football games. He started 22 of those. He was an all-ACC honorable mention guy, played 11 games and 10 starts, offensive lineman of the week in one of those starts against Stanford, which we know. He allowed for 1 sack in 2024. That's the fewest amongst ACC centers. To point to Tom's, numbers there, he's was on the Remington Award watch list and things like that, which you would expect. You play enough football as a starter at center, you're going to be on that watch list. So that in and of itself is not that big a deal, but it's nice. It's certainly there are a lot of centers out there, so he was on the list. He had the 4th highest overall grade in the ACC last year at center. So if you're kind of wondering about some of those numbers, there you go. If I told you right now that Florida State just signed the 4th or 3rd best center in the league, you would take it because we haven't had the 4th or 3rd best offensive lineman anywhere at any point. I understand awards. I understand how that works. In particular, in the interior, we haven't. I know Darius had one really good season that got everybody's hopes up, but he was really more of a Swiss Army knife and was never a consistent performer, I don't think, in this way. So I'm gonna lean towards Luke Pettibon as being the most consistent of these linemen that we've signed, and one that we should be very excited about.
Oh, totally. Now, again, this is a position where you're not under a whole lot of duress in pass pro because usually you're combo blocking with somebody else. Usually a center isn't isolated in pass protection. But his numbers are through the roof in that particular version of his responsibilities. Run blocking is a little less so, but more than adequate. It's more than adequate. So what you have here, I'm looking at pass protection performances against the likes of Ole Miss and NC State and Stanford, as we well know, and Miami and Clemson, and all these things are in the green. High 70s, low 80s. These are excellent performances in pass pro in all those situations. Run blocking can be a little bit more up and down, but what you're seeing here is a thread of a commonality between he and Micah Pettis and Gunnar Hansen, which is against lower tier teams, they're going to play very well. They're going to play very well in those situations. Against upper crust teams, not so sure, but that is the definition to me of above average. This is the definition of above average. You take care of business in a big-time way against worse opponents. And then when you play really good opponents, you don't get destroyed. You kind of hold your own, but it's mediocre. That is the definition of going into that B-plus territory for some of these offensive linemen, which is things that we wanted to hear so badly once the season was over. How are you going to address it? Florida State now has 4 new starters on the offensive line, and who knows, they might not be done yet.
I hope not. I said something that was a little bit over the top when this whole process began, but I don't think I was being too tongue-in-cheek when I said, look, man, throw massive numbers at the problem. You got to win games in the trenches. All the rest of it is window dressing. All of it. Like, you're allowed to do really creative things if you have a good offensive line and they're well above average, and all of a sudden now you start working in some double moves and slow developing plays and things that really can be creative and fun off of other looks. But you can't do any of that if you can't block. And they couldn't block last year. And I know I asked the question over and over and over again, where did Mike's creativity go? Excuse me. Why did I go back and look at film, tapes of games, old games on YouTube is a better way of saying it, from 2 years ago, and see a much more creative man? Why did I see where desperation created the necessity of that kind of creativity, where you watched him game in and game out really scheme around problem areas or protect areas of weakness? And, kind of the game plan going in became painfully obvious in a good and bad way, to use that phrase, within the second or third drive. You had a good idea. Oh, this is what Mike's doing today. This is why. He knows we can't do this, but he thinks we can exploit this. Got it. Good on you, Mike. And that's why we would come in, win or lose, in these last couple of years prior to this past season and say, I feel like they're coached well. I feel like Mike knows what he's doing. I think Mike's a good play caller. You heard me say that a lot. A lot of people disagree with that. That's fine. But I would point these things out when we won the 10 games and then the 13 games. I got a little stagnant, towards the second half of last season or the previous season. And then last year was a complete train wreck. Well, what you were watching was a steady decline, both in overall skill. We didn't have Keon Coleman last year, obviously, but also in your ability to just do functional things on the offensive line. Just your standard operating procedure. I ought to be able to get a hand on the defender across from me. Like, he ought not just walk into the backfield once the play started untouched. Yeah. And yet there we sat incredulously last year watching guys when we went back through this, and Dominic did it for us too on the channel, and went, I don't know why, but this guy is a 5-year starter at center and he didn't touch anybody here. He doesn't even, it's as if he didn't know. And this guy, they run a little simple stunt or little game on us, and nobody passes anybody off, and they're untouched. Then you watched in the run game how many times the line of scrimmage was reset before the running back even got the ball. Running back even got the ball. So I feel like this is where it was born. We used to joke around, just get me to butt-ass average. On the show, we joked around, our offensive line needs to go from butt-ass sorry to butt-ass average. That was the joke. The crude joke on the air. Can we just get to butt-ass average? Because when you get to butt-ass average, you start doing some really cool things with your receivers, with your tight ends, with your quarterback. And we couldn't do any of those things a year ago, and it got to the point Mike gave up. I mean, I don't mean he quit on the year, but he gave up trying in the way that he had been trying 2 years prior and 3 years prior. I didn't see the imagination anymore because he had come to the conclusion they couldn't do the simplest of things on the line of scrimmage. Couldn't do it.
Well, and if you saw imagination, we dropped the pass. That was the other problem last year, is there were plenty of times where you go, oh, good call, and he dropped. Awesome. That would have been a gain of 25, and we're on the other side of the 50-yard line, and we're rolling. Instead, about 3rd and 9. Sounds great.
Yeah.
That was a lot of the problem last year, was when something did open up, you didn't hit it. And last year's the thing to me last year that stood out about the offensive line was how graceful they were and how technical they were about how they wanted to place a block and arrive at a block and just judo their way with the minimal effort possible to redirect you out of the way rather than get downhill and drive you off the ball. And there were times in the beginning of games last year where they'd run split zone, inside zone, and they would move straight ahead, and you would see the line surge into the defensive backfield, and you'd say, okay.
Memphis game, SMU game, Tom, there were 2 moments where you were like, oh, well, I like this game plan. Can we stick to this, please?
Right, and then you break out counter, and then we, again, you're running gap stuff, and it looks about technique and technicality more than brute strength. And the problem with that was you had beef last year. You didn't have agility. You had beef. And so we didn't play to that strength, and that drove me nuts. And I'm not typically the play caller guy. It's just that we had it for 6 weeks doing the same things over and over again with a couple of wrinkles in and out. The Cal game was a great example of that. I know he only scored 14 points, but Cal came into that game running so much split zone that I had it burned into my brain for the scouting report. And then we ran it, and we ran it better than Cal did. It was, okay, did you find something? And then they abandoned it. I do want to see philosophically how they approach all that stuff this year, because the one problem they got to face, and the good news is, as an aside, that everybody's coming in, it would appear by spring camp they can work together. But all of these pieces individually look very, very nice. But all of these guys worked with a different group of four. And so they had the push and the pull, the chemistry of all the things that go into running their offense, knowing where their brother's going to be next to them, to their left and to their right, if they're an interior player, or if a tackle where everybody else was going to be. They knew the scheme. So how do you crash course it in two camps to get a bunch of veterans who are used to playing with other guys to play together as one? That's going to be Herb Hand's task. A lot of fun to watch in camp, the way that he manages that situation, and just generally speaking, what he wants to be about, because those habits are going to get built here, crazy to say, in about 2.5 months time, 3 months time.
You start getting into the fun of placing guys. When you have a functional offensive line, you start thinking about, or if you have a style of ball that you're trying to create with what you've brought in. So what you've brought in is a run first offense. You're going to utilize the quarterback's legs. You're going to change the math. But, how many times can you do something really, like, people fall in love with like 10 personnel where you have one running back and 4 wide receivers. They think that's the coolest thing in the world because it's very NFL-y, and you look around and you see something like that. But you know what I fall in love with? I fall in love with 13 personnel. I would love the idea of 3 tight ends, 1 wide receiver being Deuce Robinson, and 1 running back, and get you some of this, because remember, the quarterback's a runner too. So now all of a sudden I've really got 2 running backs in the backfield. I've also got 3 tight ends, and I can be really imaginative with 3 tight ends, because one of them could be my blocking tight end in the form of Biscuit. One of them could be an elite receiving tight end in the form of Williams, or one of the other receiving tight ends that we have, including the kid we brought over from UCF. Right? So then now I've got a guy who I know is a really good blocker. I'm already beefy here now because I'm going to run the football in 13 personnel now. And I have a 3rd tight end. And how do I decide to use him? What is he in the route? Is he in the route? What am I doing with him? I just want to, again, have that kind of fun and creativity and ability to even think something like that. Now, they didn't have any inline blocking last year at tight end. They didn't have anybody that could do any of that.
No.
So like, it gets fun when you have an offensive line that is not only functional, but let's just dare say maybe slightly better than average. And you'd like to believe that with the 4 offensive linemen you've now brought in, you are going to be, certainly you'll be a lot better than you were a year ago, but I'd like to aspire to better than average. I think the group that you've brought in alone tells you that they're better than average, and I hope they're not done.
Yeah, agreed. I expect now when you play those lower tier ACC teams on your schedule that you're going to be able to produce in those situations. And that's what this track record says of these players. Again, it's PFF. It's not a perfect system, but that's what this is telling me, because you have so much data. You have so many snaps to look at that I don't think they by accident blew the assessment and the grades on games against Arizona, Arizona State, BYU. I'm looking at Adrian Medley's grades. You caught me looking at a different player at this part of the video because I wanted to see what he was about. But, it could be, let's see, for the Pettibon, the new player, Virginia, dominant. NC State, dominant. Stanford, yes, dominant. Cal, yes. North Carolina, dominant. Miami, very good pass pro. Average against the run. Okay, so what you're telling me is for 6 games next year or 7 games next year, this offensive line should be good, because this is the same story across the board. If it's Hansen, if it's Pettis, if it's Pettibon, if it's Medley, that's the track record you're seeing. Okay, so now I have some expectations. And to your point, if you want to run empty or you want to run 4 wide with a back, you need Mahomes. You need Burrow, Kurt Warner. Those are the guys you need.
Get the ball out of your hands, understand what he's looking at. Yeah.
You don't need Kyler Murray for that. You don't need Castellanos for that. So this is, to your point, personnel-wise, I'd be stunned if we see 3 wide sets a lot this year. It probably will be 2. at most.
Yeah.
And that's fine by me. And I'm sure that was the pitch to Deuce Robinson. We're going to go 1 or 2 receiver, and then you're going to be the 1 or the 2 at all times. So you're going to get a lot of run, young man. They might mix it up every once in a while, and that's fine. You want variety. But I would think when you got to have it, and they got to have it on first down in Gus's offense. When you got to have it, chances are they're going to go bulkier. And that's going to be fun to see how they install it and how much they care to show in the spring showcase, if and when they host that. Like, all these little things and these little steps along the way, I'm reading it to what you are reading it to. Multiple tight ends, multiple back sets, probably 2 back sets a lot too with Castellanos, because Gus likes to run a lot of tricks. So it'll be fun to see, but this offensive line should be able to hold up in those situations.
That's 21 personnel and 12 personnel, like we were talking about. And, and I got all kind of geeky about the 10 personnel because, people get excited about that with 4 wide receivers, but we don't have 4 wide receivers. We don't have 4 guys that you totally trust there. So you're right.
Well, who's going to be an interesting piece if he gets healthy in time is a guy like Jalen Lucas, because, one thing that you want to do in these sets, and Mekhi Danzy, you do need a scattish, fast, straight ahead player that you can use in jets, pre-snap motion with the jet so that you get the eye candy to go and flow one way. And then there might be a read option or a triple option off of that with a quarterback. You do need a player that is the exact opposite of Deuce Robinson as a receiver, lined up at receiver, I think, to make this thing go. I know they're in on some kids still at that particular position, but I wonder if you don't use a player like a Lucas, if he can get fully healthy, because I think that's a nice complementary piece to go with all these other things that you're building.
You brought up blazing speed. In the case of Lucas and Danzy, you have it. And this is where you really begin to get geeky and fun. And this is where, for all you guys that, I'll retweet stuff like this sometimes, and I'll post it on my Instagram. But like, there's a guy I love to. There's several ex-coaches, ex-players, namely linemen like Baldinger and guys like that really like to get down in the muck, and how fun it can be when you start organizing principles of the wing T and things off of it with this really fascinating commitment to the run game, using multiple people to, like you said, to distract and get your eyes off the prize. And there's a lot of coming back the other way with all this stuff. But it also always, Coach Dan Casey does that. When you watch a lot of the schemes that work like this one, like the one that we're going to be running, one of the commonalities is that, yes, you have jet motion, but the other part of that is you have nasty linemen. You have guys that pull and ear hole people all the time. You see a real nastiness to what they are. And I'm just hoping that we get glimpses of that when spring rolls around. That I'd throw more offensive linemen at the problem. You have a couple of guys that I do like already on the roster that we think are trending in the right direction. But for the most part, I wanted to see them at least bring in 5 to 7 offensive linemen. Again, you cannot have a situation that resembles anything like what you had this past year. It can never really happen again. If anything, I would like to complain about Mike Norvell 4 years from now signing too many offensive linemen. Like, I want to sit here and have a conversation where I'm like, man, he was a lover scorned. Never again will he let his guard down. It will never happen again. We have 28 offensive linemen on this roster, guys. Surely 5 of them can play.
That would be a nice place to be. And now your number 1 offensive lineman that is still on the roster is Richie Leonard. So he would be trending to be your other guard, which if he's
by the way. I like Leonard.
Yeah, he was decent this year. Again, if you're going by the imperfect system, his grades are akin to the rest of the guys that you have on the roster. So you're talking about another example of somebody who takes care of lesser competition. And I do want to see what, Herb Hand can do with a 6'2", 330-pound Richie Leonard, who is pretty agile. But again, straight ahead beef. You put that guy next to some of these names that we've brought in. What if the right side of your offensive line is Leonard and Pettis? That is 660 pounds of beef on the right half of your offensive line. 6'7" lined up next to 6'2", both at 330 pounds. Okay, because I think we want to be about straight ahead a little bit more than we want to be about side to side. And I'm looking at the Cal grade that Leonard put together before he got hurt. That was his last game of the season. He was outstanding in that game. Pass blocking, he was fantastic. Run blocking, he was very good because we were a little bit more straight ahead in that game. Okay, Herb Hand, let's see what you got if this is your fifth guy. Or do you try and replace him, and now you've got a battle between Leonard and somebody else that you bring in for the interior of the offensive line? Would love to see it.
And we like Otto, and we feel like Otto's trending in the right direction. And I don't know what's going to become of Lucas Simmons and guys like that, but we'll see, right? I mean, nimble feet, 6'8" long. I mean, if they ever get anything out of him, that sure would be nice.
Well, yeah, if the upper body strength comes along with it, he looks like he has the proper bend. He looks like he has the proper technique. He looks raw. Now,
he just missed a year of football where he couldn't get bigger and stronger, so he looked like he was starting over.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunate. I mean, for those that don't know, he had a medical situation that cost him an entire year. And it was like when you went into last year, you were hoping to get something, but it was really like his first year again. So I don't know. I got to believe you'll get something out of him at some point. By the way, I do like that in your older age, Tom, your default mistake is to mention baseball players. It's still good for me. That's when you know. It's like when you pick up the phone with a long-lost friend and you're almost 40 years old and one of you brings up the weather. Somehow the weather got brought up, maybe even a bird got entered into the conversation somehow.
Yep.
What you're going to eat, it might enter into the conversation later today. So eating, weather, a bird, and default baseball players that you mix up their names. There you go.
So Brad Hand's first season in the bigs was with the Florida Marlins, before they changed their name to the Miami Marlins. So he was playing in a pro player stadium.
Brad Hand pitched for every team in the majors and has been around for 150 years. So there, that was Tom's goof right there, and it made me smile. I was like, yes, there we go.
Hey, I haven't had a Christian Jones one in a while, though.
No, that was a good one.
I'm due.
That was stuck on your brain forever. That was beautiful. 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Appreciate you. Back for more in a moment. I can proudly say that I didn't watch a single minute of the Bears-Seahawks game. Did you, sir?
No, I was footballed out, actually, believe it, from all the stuff we had the last few days. Last night's game didn't appeal to me, just on brand versus brand. And I did the thing that I usually do. Before I turned in, I looked at the score, and in the second quarter it was 3-3, and I said, I made the right call. I'm not staying up, not flipping it on. Let's just go to bed. And that's what I did.
The NFL, through 3 games that we've seen since we've been off, you had the ridiculous Christmas Day games, which it's criminal to make guys play on a Wednesday after they've played on a Saturday. But anyhow, you had the Chiefs and the Steelers, and the Chiefs did what they did, rolled into Pittsburgh, and I mean they're 15-1. Good God, man! There's like 9 games they could have lost this year. They didn't lose nary a one of them that they could have lost. We're talking the blocked field goal against Denver and all the other stuff. But anyhow, point is 29-10, they win. Ravens just demolish a waning, fading fast, don't look very competitive Houston Texans team that's going to make the playoff because the division's terrible. But the good news for the league there, and not that anybody cares about this, but I wasn't surprised to see it. The NFL streaming numbers on Netflix were massive. They were massive. So what we've learned here is the NFL cares not for your precious days. You can be the NBA and say, we own Christmas Day. And if the NFL decides one day, we'd like a piece of that, they'll come and take all of the cake. All of the cake. There were 5 NBA games. None of them touched even a small percentage of what the NFL did with the Netflix games. It's remarkable. First, they started coming for your Saturday games, Tom, where college football got told, screw the free feeder system. We will also monopolize that and screw them over. And they have. And they had huge ratings there, too. And then they said, Friday nights, those aren't sacred anymore. We will, if we want a random Friday night game, we'll throw it on. We don't care. Screw your high school games. We'll throw on a Friday game. Thursday, we'll take that away from you too. ESPN back in the day used to have those big time Thursday night games. We're talking about the many that FSU lost. That's why I always said it was such a curse. The Thursday night curse. We used to be us. It'd be like, I'm not surprised they don't throw Florida State and freaking Clemson on a Thursday night. It was ridiculous, right? But then after a while, those games, or at least the quality of those games, went away because the NFL said, no, we want that. We want that Thursday night audience. We're going to take that too. And now they've taken Christmas Day, and now they're taking over streaming. And when they are on any platform, anywhere, any day of the week, at any time, could be 8 a.m., a London game. It doesn't matter. They end up rating through the roof. It is un-effing believable. And I say all of that to say this. They put on a game last night. A lot of people thought, okay, not much of a game. I'm not going to watch this, intently, but, it's on, so we'll see. And they gave us 0 total points in the second half of a 6-3 football game that Seattle won. And I haven't checked yet, but I'm going to bet you, Tom, that the ratings were good. And that is as bad a football game that can be played.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Well, look, they're really wise. They know what they have, and they know that it won't last forever. Not at this clip. So get while the getting's good, expand the product, shrink the preseason, get to 18 games, do 2 buys, and then you can manage the holiday season, I think, a little bit better where you get better quality games with rest for the players. Next year, Christmas is on a Thursday, so most certainly they don't even have to try very hard.
No.
They can make that. They could do a doubleheader the week before Christmas, so that way you can have a doubleheader on Christmas Day and just mix the 4 teams like they did this year with the Saturday layout. One thing that I wish college football would do would be on Sunday of Labor Day weekend to start monopolizing that day. The NFL hasn't started yet. They only put 1 damn game on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 2. You got to make that puppy a triple header or 2 triple headers on 2 of your major networks. That is 1 day that the NFL cannot have because they don't start their season. I don't get why college football loads up the Saturday of Labor Day weekend, and then they'll give you a game at 7 o'clock on Sunday night. My man, you got to have 48 hours of college football action. Do what the NFL does. And maybe you can start your coverage on Netflix or whatever streaming service that you sell out to with Kay Adams hosting in the studio, because that's the way to start the day. I'm just going to put that out there. That grabbed everybody's attention. Well done, NFL.
I need Kay to eat a sandwich. I'm just saying I'm a little concerned, Tom. You and I are Kay Adams fans from her days on Good Morning Football.
That original cast was great. That was a strong show.
It's still a good show, but it was a better show at one time. And I like that original cast. But that version of Kay was not trying to be the thinnest person in America. I need Kay to get a grip. Have a sandwich.
Look, I'm sure her doctor says she's perfectly healthy, because we get on people for both ends of the spectrum here. That was a flowing red dress for the ages. Well done. Well done.
Eat a sandwich, Kay. It's okay. Get you that burger. Do something. We gotta get some meat on them bones. You're still beautiful and talented, but I'm being a pig right now. I know I am. I don't care. I'm speaking for the American men out there watching their pregame show. We got to get a burger over to Kay as quickly as possible.
And I was trying to do it responsibly, and you're like, hell with that, Tom. We're going back to 1974. Here you go.
Yeah, yes, absolutely we are. Hey, so the second part of this is juxtaposed to that godforsaken 6-3 game was another crazy college football better do something about their ridiculous overtime game that we had. And we've had 3 of these now. We had the great Georgia Tech game. It ended up being a 5 overtime game later on, which was just 48 hours ago, where South Florida beat San Jose State 41-39 in 5 overtimes. Last night, it was Toledo beating Pitt, not doing the ACC any favors. Excuse me. I got choked up thinking about the ACC.
Rockets, go Rockets.
Yeah, so Toledo beats Pitt in 6 overtimes and sets the new mark. And they win that one 41-39, I believe it was, last night. And there you go. So
a random thought really quickly.
48-46. My apologies.
No problem. Why are so many teams named the Rockets and we don't have a team called the Missiles? It feels like a missed opportunity. You get Tigers and you get Lions. I don't know of any team called the Missiles. I think if your team was named the Missiles, that would be cool.
Quadri Ishmael was known as the Missile.
That's right.
And that's right. He was. And Rocket Ishmael, his brother.
Well, yes. There was also Pavel Bure, the Russian rocket, and Valerie Bure, the Russian missile. So, Yeah.
We are finding our missiles in the sports universe.
You could also have fun with the missile thing. Too many government buildings have, like maybe one in our backyard, but you could have fun with that as well.
Oh,
Why is it always the rockets?
Well, you'd have as much fun as that as you do the South Carolina Gamecocks.
That's right.
Or the Oregon State Beavers. Like yeah, I mean, you have as much fun with these as you can. Yes.
Well, that's the name of a hot dog too, is the pork missiles. So like, you've never heard that before?
I don't think so.
So I've taught you this year that there's a glizzy as a name for a hot dog.
Yeah.
And then also pork missiles. Which
see, all of these things, I'm never going to use these terms.
You'll use pork missile.
Well,
a minor league ball club would have like the pork missile weekend hat. Why don't we have that? Embrace it. You get the blue crabs. You get the.
It sounds like something my wife would slap my shoulder for saying in the car. Like if I was driving home and I made a little snarky remark, she'd be like, Jeff, smack my shoulder. I can see that happening.
Well, here's the one thing I would say about college overtime. Let's just stop calling it fifth overtime and fourth overtime. Just call it on 2 points. And this would change betting drastically about your overs and your unders.
Yeah.
But you see a final score in soccer, it'll say 1-1, USA wins 3-1 on PKs.
Yeah.
Right? It's a subset of the final score. So if we get to 2-point tries in 2 overtimes, you just call it off and you recategorize that thing and you say the score was 36-36 and
so-and-so won in
right, and Georgia wins 4-2 on 2-point tries.
I'm not even kidding about this, and I have talked about it. I talked about it during the Georgia Tech game. Right after the Georgia Tech game, we brought this up. I brought it up because it angered me. I thought it cheapened what was an otherwise brilliant game and a well-played, hard-fought game of football. But I don't feel like we're playing football when we watch this at the end of the games when they start having to go for 2. It doesn't feel like it's football. To me, it feels exactly like what happens after watching an incredible match in soccer where we've gone, it's 0-0 or 1-1, and then you go to the golden goal and nobody scores. And the next thing you know, we're just going to bastardize the sport. We're just going to go from playing a game that we all enjoyed, where spacing and running to space and all this matters and creativity and the constant pivoting triangle and all the beauty that is the art in soccer. And then we're just going to bastardize it and make it penalty kicks, which doesn't even feel like the sport. And so I feel like that's what they've done with college football's overtime. I get it. They don't want people, and I don't care. We're so past, we jumped the shark ages ago when it comes to worrying about player safety. Stop with that nonsense. It used to be we're never going to play more than 10 games because of player safety. Then it was, okay, well, we'll play 11, but we're certainly not going to play 12. We're never going to play 12. Now we play 12. People finish the year 15-0, 16-2. I mean, nobody cares anymore about the safety of players. So don't give me that nonsense about, well, in the overtime, everybody's so tired, we're worried about their safety. Well, get in better shape. Get in better shape because one of you is going to lose because the other one is in better shape. That's how I view it. Just keep playing football, please.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pauses in overtime. So if you need a breather, you're going to get one because they take every break imaginable. And I'm not trying to discount, especially in the trenches, what it takes to play in a football game because it is brutal and you need the breaks between possessions. You need the breaks. But you're right. I mean, these games take 4 hours now, especially if you get to that point. It's a 4-hour situation where you might be playing 65, 70 snaps. All right, push it to 100. We were doing that anyway in the era before the clock stoppages were wiped out and the 2-minute timeout was brought in just this past year. So we're beyond that. Or we're not that far away from an era where you ran 105 plays. That was all too common just 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
I just don't I want the game to be highlighted and glorified. I want, okay, if you want to meet somewhere in the middle, I'm open to the conversation. I'm not saying we've got to line it up, kick it off like it's the start of a football game in overtime, although I would. That said, if you put the ball at the 50, fine, put the ball at the 50, 1st and 10 on the 50, and let's go from there. Now you got to work to kick a field goal. You got to earn that at least. You got to get a couple first downs to feel good about a field goal at least. you know, and even then that'd be a 47-yarder, you know, so you'd still have to earn something at least, and the defense would have a chance to slow. So you put the ball in the effing 2 or the 1.5. I mean, what?
Yeah,
This is stupid.
Look, my whole thing too is if you're going to do that, you don't need to walk down from one half of the field to the other and then give a team a timeout. You keep rolling, you keep moving. I
agree with that for the time purposes, but I reject the principle of putting the ball on the 1 or the 2. Don't do that. We're not playing football. Stop that. That's actually, I think, potentially more dangerous because we both know goal line is much more dangerous. I just in physical. I play football, man. Let's go. I want to be able to call a real play.
Or, well, how about what Mike Norvell used to do? And I don't know if they still do it. The one day it was open to us. You win or you lose. It's you pick offense or defense on a coin flip, and then on offense or defense, it's first to 5, and you first to 5 stops or scores,
and it's nasty, and it is nasty. That is a bludgeoning.
To this day, I think they did first to 10 that day we were there. That is the best practice I've ever seen, and I wish they did it for the spring showcase. That game is freaking awesome. It's at the 2 or 3 yard line, and it's first to 10 stops or first to 10 scores. It might have been 5, but they went the distance. The offense and the defense for Florida State went the distance. This was 2 spring camps ago.
Yes,
it was riveting. It was awesome.
It's Tom. It was missing this year. They didn't do it at all that we know of, and I've said this before. You have to have more physicality in your camps, your practices, and that was one of the ways that they absolutely could. Now, not only would I do that every now and again, I would do it every week.
Yeah,
we would do that to finish every Tuesday practice. I'm telling you right here, right now, we would do that every Tuesday. We're getting down there, and you're playing downhill, and here we go. Let's man up and see who wins this, and make the rewards if you want. I mean, I guess you got to incentivize everything these days, but make the rewards whatever. The next day they get a period off early or something. I don't know what it is, but whatever you got to do.
Hey, the schools can pay players now. Just have a briefcase on a drone hovering above the goal line, and then it drops on one side or the other after it's over, and the players can split it amongst themselves. But that was, I know you would want it to be equitable so both offenses can be on the field and both defenses can be on the field, but I'm telling you, at least for the showcase.
Yeah.
You do that in the stadium, and you could do all the stupid nonsense you want with these walkthrough drills. You give people goal line first to 5 wins, man, people will lock in. That's better than the college overtime by a mile because it just keeps going, and that way the defense gets rewarded. If they get a stop, you see a point on the board for the defense.
Yeah, and it's like yes, in a weird way, it's still like going to PKs a little bit, but yes, I see what you're saying. It's better than what
a one-off, you know, like because you have an aggregate here where it tells you a better, more reliable story of who's what.
That's true. Chef Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Wrapping up the hour. Reminder that this is in the can today. We'll have a best of for the 3rd hour, which will also feature more bowl swag. Did you have fun finding the bowl swag segments? I bet you did.
I did. The one that's going to air today is from 2016. We've run that a couple of times in the last few months, but the one that ran yesterday, I don't even know what year it is because I can tell by, just the audio processing of it, it sounds a little bit different. So it's definitely early ESPN radio days, I would say. That was good fun. So there was quite a bit of good stuff that aired yesterday.
I'm glad we found the treasure trove. I wish we could go way back and find some of the other stuff too, but we got some.
One of the segments, it was the Penn, might have been the Penn University. There was a kid who was an auto engineering major for the program. The bus broke down on the way to the game, and he fixed the bus so they could get there.
He fixed the bus. That is right. I forgot about that. That's the thing is you do so many stories. You do so many, segments over the course of 20 plus years doing this, 25 plus years doing this, you forget.
And that just got into a discussion from you and I about how we're not handy. Of all like the manly things, the one thing we don't do, we hire people to fix things. Although you've gotten more handy since that recording. You've done some more things.
I've gotten more handy because of YouTube. YouTube will teach you, like you can look up simple things on YouTube where they're like, oh, you just do this, this, and this. I'll tell you, there is still, I will argue, there's a knack that certain people have, not just men, because my wife has the knack to put things together. Like if we buy a complex, it's Christmas, people can relate to this. If you buy something for young kids, now luckily my kids are older, 17 and 14, but when they were little, and I was thinking about this the other day, I enjoyed Christmas more when they were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old. There's nothing better than your kids running down the hall at butt o'clock in the morning while you're sitting there with a sip of coffee staring at the train set you put together the night before and, labored till midnight in GDing each other.
Hey, Santa built that. Santa built that.
Right. Yeah, I always kind of resented Santa for that, by the way. I would always, spend huge amounts of money on the Thomas the Train set that we got and put together this huge thing. And then all of a sudden Santa gets all the credit. I'm like, screw that fat ass. I put that together. Anyhow, so
it's one of the few things you and the people of Philadelphia agree upon.
I don't know if you've seen the Netflix 25-minute documentary on Trey Turner and that fan from Philadelphia who started. You didn't see it? It's 25 minutes long. It's worth watching. Like, you don't have to care anything about Philadelphia. This is a humanist story.
I don't, but Trey Turner, when he's on, is one of the great ball players in the game. I mean, he changes games. So and I know what it's about, right? It's about the confidence thing.
Yeah. So a fan, a avid, diehard, as Kirk Herbstreit would call him, lunatic fringe member of the Philadelphia Phillies fan base, he recorded himself before a weekend series for Philadelphia, in which he said he just posited the idea that they should not boo Trey Turner. So Trey Turner comes over from the Dodgers. He signs a $300 million deal to play for a Phillies team that was within 2 games of winning the World Series. And they are like, well, that's it. We've got it. This puts us over the top. This is going to be it. This is going to be, this is the guy. Well, like a lot of big money free agents, he comes in with a lot of pressure and doesn't play well in the beginning. Right. And then all of a sudden, all the things that Trey Turner did well, which is alley to alley power, which is, stolen bases, which is fielding, right, range, all the things that he has. Tom's right. Trey Turner's a really good player when he's right. Anyhow, it starts piling up on one another, and they're booing him mercilessly in Philadelphia, right? He's on every talk show. It's screw this bum. This guy's killing us. It's getting to the point where we can't start him. You can't even put him out there anymore because he can't pick up the baseball. And you can see the look on his face, right? So this guy who's a season ticket holder, and this is where it gets touching, he himself he's got real issues. He's had some depression issues and problems in his life. He had a tough go. His parents were 15 and 14 years old when he was born. So you get a sense of what his life's been like. And in Philadelphia, in this tiny little house, in this whole situation. And I won't ruin it for you, but you get a glimpse of how tough things have been for him. And it gets very touching, very touching. And he kind of sees the importance of, when you're down at your lowest, the need for somebody to be there that shows faith and trust in you and love in you, right? Showers you with that when you're at your lowest point. And it's 25 minutes, and it turns on a dime after this one particular segment where you go, oh man, it takes your breath away a little bit. And he records this video in his car, and he says, hey guys, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working. Maybe this weekend, every time Trey Turner comes to bat, we give him a standing ovation. And he just records it.
Yep.
And it becomes kind of viral, and it's played on a radio station, and then other Phillies fans are like, oh, okay, can't hurt, right? So he comes to the plate in a weekend series, and he gets a standing ovation. And you can see the look on Trey Turner's face. He's stunned, and he's looking around, and then sure enough, he's kind of like shocked, and he shoots a single the other way. And he gets to first, and it was with a runner at second. And so guy scores, and he gets to first base, and you can see this relief on his face, and the fans are going nuts. And it's just a regular season game, right? And it's game 1 of a 3-game set. And he gets to first base, and he looks over at the first base coach, and he's just kind of smiling like, that's crazy. What are these fans doing? But they keep doing it. And he has a good weekend series. Now, it's not a fairy tale. He doesn't go, 12 for 12 over the weekend. but he hits like 500 for the series and comes up with several key hits. And more than that, he's hitting the ball hard. And so then they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then he hits a home run in the 9th inning of a game, and he looks like he's almost in tears rounding the bases. And I'm sitting here like a sap on my couch watching this thing going, Jesus, man.
See, so we don't need to watch it now. Here you go. We've got the whole thing.
I would watch it if I were you. It's 25 minutes, but they do meet at the end. And it's very cool.
So thanks a lot to that guy, because my division rival is better because of Trey Turner. I watched him in one game last year, I'll say this quickly, make 3 plays that would make Omar Vizquel blush at shortstop.
Yeah.
Following one of them with a home run in the next half inning and winning a game by himself. I go, this son of a... I mean, like, he is unbelievable when he's...
Well, and they got a couple guys like that. Bryce Harper's like that. It's where you're like, really? You're going to go first to third on that, are you? Okay, I see how it is. Yeah, the little things that win baseball games. I gotcha. Yeah, great. Hour number 2, fourth coverage. Stay with Jeff Cameron, 93.3 Real Talk Radio.